Wonderful, wonderful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us at this ABC webinar. My name is Jim Lawson, and I am with the manager of public outreach here at ABC. And we are doing webinar series. We're doing podcast series. We're speaking at all the state, regional, and national meetings now that they're all ramping back up. And we're so glad you can join us today. We have a couple little housekeeping things before we begin. One of the opportunities we're going to have here is after this webinar, you're going to receive an email with a survey. We're going to ask you to go ahead and fill out that survey. How pertinent was this for you? Did you enjoy what we were doing? Did you learn anything? Give us your feedback. We would appreciate that greatly. And you're also going to have an opportunity that you have, if you have any other subjects that you would like to see or hear information about or discussions, please let us know. We're always looking for that next subject, next topic. So please let us know about that. We're also, in the email, you're also going to receive the link. We're recording this today. We're going to receive the link for this recording, that if you would like to either watch it again or share it with someone else in your office or share it with someone you know, we would appreciate that greatly. So that would be wonderful. I think we're going to go ahead, but before we have, Megan, did you want to say one more thing? Did you want to bring up anything about our questions today, Q&A?
I just wanted to make sure everybody knows, I'm sure we're all familiar with Zoom now, but yep. Up in the right-hand corner, there is a selection for view. So if you want to see not only the PowerPoint presentation, but also the video of Pete and Jim discussing, you can actually select your view to kind of change how all that looks and what's being displayed. And if you have any questions at all as it's going along, go ahead and type those into the question box or the chat box. And we will hold the questions till the end and answer all of those. If you have some at the end, you feel free to put those in the chat as well. So
great. We'll get to as many of those as we can at the end of the presentation. Fantastic. Thank you, Megan. Thank you very much. I'm going to start out with just something obvious we have here. Those working in the O&P profession provide care to countless people. They affect their lives, they affect their family, they affect their livelihood, they affect their mobility. And that's something that we all know. We all know completely with this fantastic profession, orthotics and prosthetics, orthotics. But we wanted to bring and let you know that some O&P professionals are using skills to help some of the animals with a similar care. So we knew there were some ABC practitioners delving into the world of animal O&P, and we thought it would be interesting subject to share with our credential holders. So during the research, when Megan and I were doing research and Debbie Ayers research on this topic, we discovered that there's more and more O&P professionals applying their expertise to help our little furry friends. And they're not all little furry friends, but from pets to farm animals to those living in the zoos, members of profession are making differences in those in needs. And one such practitioner, and you're looking at him right now, is Peter DiPaolo, CPO from Fort Myers, Florida. Pete has worked with humans for a long time. But then he received a request from a local veterinarian asking him if he would help a rescue puppy, and then Pete was hooked. Pete, welcome to our Passion Behind the Profession series. Now, we've done most of our interviews in this series, the Passion Behind the Profession, of our Credcast podcast, but we thought that this discussion would be best suited for a webinar so we could take a look at some of the amazing photos, some of the videos, and have the opportunity for some of the attendees to ask questions of you at the end of this presentation. Pete, we are so glad that you could join us today. Welcome.
Jim, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Certainly, certainly. So glad you made it. So, Pete, let's start at the very beginning. Tell us how you got into O&P, into the O&P profession, and then more importantly, as we're discussing today, how did you end up working with pet O&P?
Well, I've been a CPO for over 20 years. I did my undergrad up in University of Connecticut. I had an interest in physical therapy, and that took me a different route to biomechanics and kinesiology. And it wasn't until my senior year of college I was doing research on knee braces and how they actually support the knee for athletes. And a grad student came up to me and asked me what I was doing after college, and I had no idea. And he saw me doing research on knee braces, and he said, why don't you check out this field of orthotics and prosthetics? And I really had no idea what I was getting into, honestly, because in our field, I think us practitioners know that everybody comes from a different get into the field for a certain reason, whether your family was in the business or you know somebody, but everybody has their own unique story. So I went to school in Connecticut, postgraduate school. I did my residency at a children's hospital and started out with a strong pediatric background. Started doing a lot of work with cranial for plagiocephaly. Then 15 years later, well, it's now 10 years, then 10 years later, I followed my family to Florida. And so I'm in Southwest Florida. I've been practicing here now 15 years, almost 15 years. And we have a very strong prosthetic practice. I did build up a big cranial practice through partnering with some specialist pediatricians and some children's hospital specialists. Then about a little over 5 years ago, we received a phone call from a veterinarian, and my office administrator looked back at me and said, "Hey, Pete, I have a veterinarian on the phone. Do we do prosthetics for dogs?" And I said, "Well, no, but I'll take the phone call." If any of you know, with Winter the Dolphin Tail Hanger Clinic, sure, does the dolphin tail, and I know personally the prosthetists that work with her, and I've had a chance to work and see her as well. And so that's how our vet found us. And then I took the phone call.
Well, very good. Very good. So you took the phone call. All right. You took the phone call. That's simple to do. Taking a phone call is really simple to do. What's your next step?
Well, what do we, we don't say no, right? Have we seen this before? So what this was a story, was a Great Dane puppy that was rescued by a local veterinarian, and he's an orthopedic vet, and I didn't know that there were different specialties, and well, in terms, I didn't know there were orthopedic vets. Sure. I didn't know much about the field, right? So this Great Dane puppy needed to be rescued. She suffered an injury to her back paw and had to have her paw amputated at her hock level, which is her ankle, or anatomically the ankle, but in veterinary terms for a dog, it's called the hock. So the doctor asked me to come in. His name was Dr. Rose, actually, and named her Rosie. Asked me to come into the clinic and take a look at her. I talked to all the powers that be about this and said, this is a good story. It's going to be a feel-good story. This veterinarian asked us to come out, and the rescue was very involved in the community locally. So we thought that this would be something that we could take on as a project, and that's where it started.
That's where it started. Okay. So very good. So you have Rosie. You got your first dog patient. Okay. I'm very interested in that. Okay. So what were some of the challenges you reaching out to your very number one animal patient?
Jim, I've actually got some clip of Rosie. Do we want to see that?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see Rosie.
We got a nice slow-mo of this prosthetic in action here.
Now,
there she is.
How old is Rosie when you first meet Rosie here?
I met Rosie when she was about 3 months old. Okay. Smaller than that. Her wound was pretty fresh. He took the wrap. We went in the back. We took the wrapping off of her leg. And so you asked me what were some of the challenges. Well,
yeah. What are some of the challenges?
I brought it back to basics because I did my research prior to going to see him, looking at the anatomy for dogs, and looking at dogs have a tibia and a fibula and a femur like we do.
Right.
Just, different length, different way that they obviously their gait is. So I looked at Rosie, and she presented like a Symes amputee. Okay. So she had the amputation right at would be our ankle and her hock. So that's how she presented. So how do we design this? I went back to basics with human orthotics and prosthetics. How do we design a Symes prosthesis? And knowing that she was a puppy, so I had to treat her like a pediatric patient, that one that's going to grow fast, one that's going to be very active, and really test the limits of their prosthesis. So I had to build it pretty lightweight but robust at the same time.
Very good. And Megan, I think, do we have a video clip of the news?
He's one of the few people.
So we have a clip. It's not from Rosie, but it's one of the other news stories, and I think it's pretty interesting. So you want to take a look?
Sure.
Sure.
For the country helping dogs who can't walk, walk. And he's right here in Southwest Florida. Tucked inside his garage, Peter DiPaolo's hard at work changing the lives of pets.
I've been working in the orthotics and prosthetics industry for 20 years on the human side.
And he still does in his 9 to 5. But after 5, this licensed prosthetist makes braces and prosthetics for dogs.
Dogs have a humerus and a femur like humans do. It's just the body is different sizes and shapes.
The process to make the braces takes about 2 weeks. He starts with a cast of the dog's leg and uses this tool to take pictures of it.
And it translates into a 3D model.
That gives him a carving of the dog's leg so he can make a plastic brace.
Lay it down.
Buddy tore his left Achilles. During recovery, he injured the other one. Surgery wasn't an option.
He can't walk. He drags the leg behind him, so he can't run or go to the park.
But with the brace, Buddy can walk. Java's mom is a veterinarian and swears by DiPaolo's brace.
She has really severe arthritis in her elbow. So the orthotic, it's like someone having a knee brace. It takes the pressure off of the joint.
DiPaolo has even created a prosthetic for a dog. Since he hand makes each brace, they can run about $800. But the dog moms we talk to say it's worth it.
A lot of times the pets are like children to them, and they get a way of having the satisfaction that their loved one is doing a lot better.
And DiPaolo's treated dogs ranging in age from 4 months all the way to 11 years old, and from Pomeranians to Great Danes.
So
Only
Pete,
a man who's deaf.
well, Pete, with this,
Except for
So-
now, they range way more than Great Danes, right?
that's right.
Yes.
But Pete, with the first animal, I know that it was a public relations story almost. The public was very involved in that, and so the
Yeah.
news team did come out and do that. How did you feel getting that recognition? Just saying, "All right, I'll go ahead and help," and then all of a sudden you're getting recognition for that.
Well, I'm sure with most clinicians and clinicians out there, whether you own your practice or you work for a company, whether you're a staff clinician or a practice manager, in order, you want to treat your practice like your own, and you want to do things that are going to help your practice, but also provide great care for your patients and obviously their families. And there was, the doctor did say to us, this was a big rescue, that there's going to be PR piece on it. And I
Okay.
thought that was empowering. I thought that was great and exciting. Any way for us to show the community what we're doing to help, help our human patients, but now a feel-good story for an animal.
So, did you think this was a one and done? You went and you helped a puppy.
Yep.
You have a one and done experience. You're now going back to take care of your human patients. Is that what you thought it was?
Yes, I did. And it actually, Rosie did make national news too. She made on Insider Edition throughout the country, and it became a national story. So I did have some colleagues throughout the country that I know reach out to me and say they saw her on TV. And so, I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was just a nice feel-good piece, and went on my way to keep practicing at work.
And then other phone calls would happen. Is that correct?
So that same doctor, Dr. Rose, about a month later, he calls, and my same office administrator says, "Hey, it's that veterinarian, Dr. Rose. He wants to know if we do braces for dogs." And I said, and I chuckled, and I said, let me speak to him. So I took the call, and he said that he needs a knee brace for a dog. He called it a stifle, and I had to look up in the terminology, and a knee for a dog is called their stifle. So
Okay.
I had to understand that. She suffered a CCL injury. Well, in human terms, it's ACL. And back to the basic terminology, we understand anterior, posterior. In the animal world, it's cranial caudal. So your anterior cruciate ligament is the cranial cruciate ligament. So you had to learn that. I had to learn that terminology. So moving forward, I I said, sure. And I came into the clinic to see this dog that he needed a knee brace for.
Great. Well, let's fast forward a little bit.
Yep.
So now we know that you have a passion for this, right? You start to gain a passion for working with the animals. How did you turn this passion, and when did you decide you were going to turn this passion into creating a business?
Well, what had happened was there was a surgeon in town who he and his wife had a rescue for pugs, little obviously the little dogs, and he saw the news story, and he said, we have a rescue that had her front leg, she was born with a deformity and had to have the paw amputated, and asked me if I can make a prosthesis for her. And of course I don't say no. I said sure. And when I was there in my office fitting it, and one of my colleagues looked at me and he hit me in the elbow and said, hey, this would be a nice little business, wouldn't it? And I thought nothing of it at the time. And of course I went online and researched, and there's only a few companies in the country that do this full time. And I thought to myself, wow, this would be a great little side hustle, if you would. And it's extra time out of work, and you have to have work-life balance, of course, because I have a family.
Sure.
So I decided to come up with a name and create my small business.
Very good. And the name of the company is Prosthetics. Very
Prosthetics.
clever. Very clever.
Very
So tell me some of the goals and what's your mission with Prosthetics?
Well, as you can see on the screen, elevating the quality of life for people and their pets. I came up and I branded it. I did a lot of work with my website, and really worked on coming up with that slogan, or if you would, because elevating the quality of life for people and their pets. I have to be honest with you, and I have a confession to make. I've never owned a dog in my growing up. And people ask, "Oh my God, you work on dogs? You don't even own a dog." My kids, we have 2 little guinea pigs. We're trying to.
Those are hard to work on. Yeah.
Exactly, but trust me, we look through the internet, and there have been little prosthetics made for little guinea pigs and little carts for. But nonetheless, so in terms of this slogan here, like I said in the news clip, I've learned so much that pets are family.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like children to people and couples who don't have children themselves, or ones that have children. I mean, a dog or a cat are a big part of their lives, and they love them like family, and probably would do almost anything for them and spend almost anything for them too. So that was the basics behind that, because we knew that you're helping a child. The parent is going to do anything for their child. You feel the same way they're going to do that for their pet.
Certainly. So your business is moving along, and you're seeing different dogs and different animals. Now you're starting to branch out. You start getting other phone calls for other types of animals. What are the types of animals?
Well, I did. I started to work with farm animals, anywhere from sheep to goats to cows, and these are usually rescues throughout the country, and actually the world. Actually, now I've worked with a couple rescues throughout the world, and then on to horses. The largest animal I've worked on so far was a 1,500-pound horse that I did a prosthesis for. So it just started branching out into different animals, and sometimes in our field, you can't make up these stories, right? Well, I did have a rescue up in New England that reached out and wanted me to make a prosthesis for a duck.
A duck.
A duck. I'm currently making a prosthesis for a turkey, and if we add some humor to this, the turkey's name is Peyton Manning.
It just keeps getting better.
You just, like I said, my wife and I chuckle because you just can't make this stuff up, right? And it's a rescue, and the turkey had an infection in one of his in his claw, and they had to have his foot amputated, and it's like a Symes amputation, and I'm just going with the basics there, and making a prosthesis for this turkey. It's fun, it's enjoyable.
I think you told us before that you maybe even did a cat. Did you try to do a cat?
Once. Anyone that are cat owners or own cats, and actually I did have a couple cats earlier, and I have experience with owning cats. Very skittish, don't want to be touched. They're set in their ways. I think that, and this was a kitten. It was a rescue. It was a kitten that had to have part of its back leg amputated, and the kitten didn't want to have anything for me to do with touching her leg. So I've seen, though, the only success that we've had in the animal world with cats are probably older, elderly cats that are just more sedentary and, say, lazy, that need something. But yeah, I just move forward. Cats are challenging.
Yeah.
Just with their demeanor. Absolutely.
Well, I'm very interested in the mechanics of the farming.
Sure.
My family, at my house here, we have goats and we have chickens. We don't have any ducks, but we have different animals in that area. What are some of the rewards and some of the challenges working with the larger animals?
I found with learning in the veterinary field that the younger generation of veterinarians are more coming out with a new generation of more open to new methods, techniques. In other words, let's put it simply. Maybe you've heard that, if a horse breaks its leg, what happens to a horse? No more useful, right? Well, now it's not like we're going to put the horse down. It's like, what can we do to add life to this horse's years? So I've helped with rescuing several horses that may have been put down, but the owners found out through their veterinarians, or even found online, that there are options for these animals to help add life to their years, not just put them down. And so it's very rewarding because you're saving this animal's life.
Right.
And, so I worked with a rescue up in North Florida. Well, actually, I'm sorry, it wasn't a rescue, but it was a breeder whose thoroughbred mare suffered a radial nerve injury. Now, we all know what radial nerve injuries are as clinicians, right? But horses suffer a radial nerve injury from getting caught in a fence out in the pasture. Who would know, right? Unless you were in the veterinary world or a horse owner. She had a radial nerve injury in her front leg, and basically it was flail, it was paralyzed. And I had to make a device to help her, and it was contracted, and I had to help make a device to get her being able to weight bear on that side. And because the owners wanted to try to breed her because she was a thoroughbred.
Right.
So instead of taking a step, I did take a step back and just, again, going back to basics. The basics in terms of what we do in orthotics and prosthetics. If you go here, here she is right here. This is DiPaolo, absolutely. And actually, going further into this story, her front left leg was taking the brunt of all the weight. So she had a very bad medial lateral instability in that knee. So I made a knee brace for her left leg and a prosthesis on the right side.
Yeah, I've got a little video if we want to watch it.
Sure.
I think this is her stepping on it.
Yep.
Now, is this her for the first time?
Yep. Now, if you see,
yeah,
the right leg is the one that has the contracture. If you can see that, it's a radial. And then there's the prosthesis on the right side, or in the human world, we call it a prosthesis, right? It's a combination of an orthotic, as you can see. She has a contracted leg, and then I added a prosthetic extension to it for her to weight bear on. So, and then the knee, if you notice there, the bad varus moment she has in that instability, we use that to give her that stability and stand. And this is the first time I put them on her.
Wow.
Very good. Now you've worked with all different kind of animals and all different kind of sizes. What are some of the most unique devices, either prostheses or orthoses, that you've created for the animals?
Unique. I think with I think with prosthetics, it's becomes very unique because not every animal is a prosthetic candidate. Now, what do I mean by that? I think we all have seen three-legged dogs running around, right?
Sure.
And you say, oh, they get around fine with 3 legs, and most of them will until they get older, and that's a different decision that owners have to make. You'll see in a lot of dogs, if you've seen wheelchairs and the carts they make,
Yes.
those are mobility devices. The unique devices I have to say would be prosthetics, because it's not textbook in terms of you have a BK, AK. We don't have knees that out there that we could put on dogs, and right now but so every prosthetic is a unique scenario, if you would. Now with DiPaolo here in the picture, I'm using stainless steel Becker joints on there, as you can see on the and that's all laminated. I'm using heavy duty joints, componentry on the prosthesis on the right. So that was a challenge. That was a very unique scenario there, and that was a unique device I created there. So the prosthesis I designed on my own, but taking up my experience in prosthetics, and human prosthetics, and applying it to animals. So I would say again, the prosthetics tend to be the unique devices that I create, because it's usually either from a missing limb or a deformed limb. Maybe the animal is born with a deformity, and you have to create a device to help them weight bear on it and be ambulatory.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it can be surprising how quickly and how easily the animals sometimes adapt to the orthotic or prosthetic device. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. When I'm fitting a device for the first time, let's go for dogs, for example. Okay. I do, but most of the animals I work with are dogs. I tell the owners that they're either going to run, sit, or try to get it off. Good one. Perfect. I could show you a video where I put a brace on a dog and they go off running. I could show you a video where they just sit down and not want to do anything, or they try to chew it off. What I do is when I fit a brace, I go and take them outside, because dogs are very easily distracted. They see a squirrel or a bird and they take off. So I do have a very detailed weaning schedule I give them, because it's easy for me, Jim, to tell you, hey, Jim, listen, this is a brace you're going to wear. This is how it's going to feel. I want you to wean into it, right? I want you to wear it an hour on, more an hour. And this is how, and if you have any problems in a couple weeks, give me a call, right?
Right.
Well, you can't tell that to animals, right? But you can tell that to their owners, and you want to be very detailed with them. And so you have to have the animals wean in it too, because they've got to get used to it.
Right. Very good. Well, along those same lines, you mentioned earlier that not all animals are good candidates. How do you decide what animal is a good candidate for the service you provide, for your care?
Well, first of all, the owners have to embrace it first. The owners have to buy into it.
Sure.
Because insurance doesn't pay for these. It is an investment. And you have to make sure that they're going to be, I mean, you won't know right away, but you could tell when someone may have the potential to not be a compliant patient, or even owners. You have to see where's their environment. Is it just an animal that's out in the pasture all day and they don't have anybody tending to the animal? Are the owners home all day with the animal? Do they travel a lot and have them boarded a lot? So you have to take all that, their home life, into consideration first, I think.
Certainly.
And then you have to see, it's just from my experience, because I haven't said no to any dog, so I don't know if it's a Chihuahua or if it's a Bull Mastiff. So, and then with this little one here, no dog's too small. And the challenge with smaller dogs is the componentry. You want to make it just like you want to make it light. And because I think when we go back to the basics of orthotics, you never want to overbrace, right? You never want to overbrace a patient. You don't want to overbrace an animal, because they will reject it.
Right.
You want to make it very mobile, very lightweight. And, sometimes the owners want to get a little fancy and do different patterns, but that's, up to each individual owner there. But looking at the anatomy of the animal, I won't say no to any dog. I'll try it. I'll always try.
Okay,
And
Pete.
see how we do.
Well, now, so I'm looking at the dogs, okay? Looking at our domesticated pets. I know if right now in my office, I have a golden retriever and I have a little Shih Tzu right outside the door. I know if they needed your services, I was going to be really paying attention to either the orthosis or the prosthesis placed on my dog. So I'm really gonna watch that. What about those farm animals? What about a cow? What about a horse? Are they being watched as closely? And what are some of the issues that they run into? They're not in my air-conditioned house, and they're not on my leash when I'm walking. What about the animals out in the field and in the barn?
Well, I have, learned from a colleague of mine who was doing this for over 20 years with large animals, and he helped mentor me in large animals and horses, cows. Reason why is because even though you may look at a horse, look how strong their legs are, and think that they could tolerate anything, but their skin can't tolerate it any easier than your skin or mine. And as a matter of fact, it's more challenging because they may have a lot of muscle on there, but they don't have a lot of residual tissue. Their skin is may not be as tough. They're more prone to pressure sores if the owner doesn't follow a strict wearing schedule, if they don't clean the device, if they don't take it off every day. Just like a human not taking off their prosthesis every day, they got to clean it, they got to watch for pressure sores, and the animal's not going to tell you.
Right.
They may just push through it. They may lay down because it's bothering them, but you may put a device on a horse all day long and take it off the next day and have this huge pressure sore because you didn't, or the owner didn't, inspect the skin and follow the wearing schedule. So yeah, there are more challenges with farm animals because you have whether it's down in Florida in a very humid environment or up north in a very cold, wet, damp environment. You have to take that into consideration.
Very good. How busy is Prosthetics right now? How busy are you?
Very
when you're
busy.
Focusing on animals. Very busy?
Yeah. Busy enough to, busy enough, if we put it that way. I have to keep a work-life balance, of course, and take care of my humans as well.
Sure. They're kind of important, yes.
Yes.
Well, let me ask you, are you aware of any programs? I've tried to do some research on it and I haven't found anything. Are you aware of any programs that are educational with O&P veterinary, with O&P working with pets?
Nope.
None at all?
Nope. No. Veterinarians, I've gotten to know many veterinarians of all experience and ages. And like I said, the younger vets are more proactive in alternative treatments. So whether it be, you know what, your animal may need surgery. However, here's another option. They haven't had education in orthotics and prosthetics, but they know that there are options. So there really isn't any direct education.
Okay.
However, there are rehab veterinarians and actually vet technicians that go into rehab and actually do physical therapy for animals. And they're starting to come up with webinars and some research and papers. So you could research that and find, like I said, maybe a webinar or two or some magazine articles on the treatment. And it's really companies like mine and others that are the ones that are creating the data for the research. So I've been interviewed by many magazines, a couple veterinarian periodicals that have reached out to me and interviewed me and created articles on just basically on my experience. And so that's where it's going. So I think the research is coming out just from basically the experience that I'm having and other practitioners like me that are doing animal orthotics and prosthetics. So I think there is a future for education in it. And I think
certainly,
because there's no certification.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I'm just noticing in some of the comments, we're getting some information about some people having classes, and I think we'll bring that up when we get to the end of the presentation. So that's wonderful. I think that's great. Moving along with this, I have had the question of 3D. What do you think? Have you used any 3D printing with animals?
Yes.
If so, is it just that? Are you using? And I've also read articles where me as a pet owner, if I had a 3D printer, I could print something up for my animal itself.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts? I don't think I'd ever want to do that, but what are your thoughts on that?
I have a 3D printer. I don't have a very expensive one. 3D printers range from a couple $100s to thousands of dollars,
Sure.
depending. For a lot of people, it's just a little hobby. It could start out as a hobby and then become something that you do, as a business. So for me, I've, quote unquote, tinkered with it. You start off making little cell phone stands and things like this.
Right.
And, I actually made some things that I put my company's logo on that I handed out at vet conferences. So, but structurally, it's difficult. I have made a 3D foot for a duck.
Did you put it on its bill?
But
Sorry.
good one.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Hey, we didn't plan that one.
No. And I apologize to everyone.
No. In general, my experience with 3D printing, I think 3D printing in the O&P world has a long way to go. I think that we're just in the infancy, and this is my opinion. I think we're just in the infancy of 3D printing as to where it's going to be applied to orthotics and prosthetics on a more continuous basis. Because we know that there's companies making 3D printed sockets. You're using 3D printed technology for things, and even being applied today now. That companies that may have investing in that time. There is a lot of time to invest in 3D printing, and I've invested a lot of time. There's a lot of, trial and error. But basically, the process of thermoforming and laminating, what we do in the O&P world, for me, is faster, more efficient, and less expensive still to do it this way.
Now, I see in the slide here, I was going to ask you, where are you doing most of your work in Florida? But I see you're doing your work all over. Am I correct?
Yep. I've got a couple rescues I'm working with in Canada right now. I actually made a knee brace for a pig in Australia. And I'm actually doing some work in Hawaii right now. And I'm all doing, these are vets and rescues that I've developed relationships with.
Well, Pete, this is fascinating. Your whole story is fascinating, and there are people like you all across the country. I'm so glad that you were able to join us to share this story with us. I think we're going to move into some Q&A, if that's good with you. I've seen, Megan, if you could take a look at those. I saw a lot of questions coming in. We have a lot of interest, Pete. So, Megan, would you like to go ahead and moderate that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we've got one question here. From Carl asking regarding casting the animal. He says that he's attempted 2 castings on 2 different dogs, and the first dog was very docile, but the second would not even let him touch her.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get a vet involved to medicate them so that they are able to be casted?
Absolutely. If that is, just like anything we do, the first time you do it, you haven't done it before, you may be a little nervous. You may not know how to handle the animal because this is not your animal, so you don't know their demeanor. When I interview, when I get a new client, I interview the owners and I ask about the demeanor of the dog or the animal. How is their demeanor? Oh, they're very mild mannered. They're or no, very very energetic, or sometimes I've had an owner say, no, she's downright mean and she will bite you. So yes, I have gotten vets involved, and vets are very, very willing. Most vets are willing to do that. The owners have to pay for a sedation, and it's just like a mild IV just to sedate them to do that. And that is actually the best case scenario when they're sedated. You have all the time in the world to cast them and do what you want. They're not going to kick. They're not going to move. But I'll have to say, out of the hundreds of animals I've worked with, I honestly have to say maybe even a half a dozen we've had to sedate. And the reason why is because I've gotten better and quicker at it. But you just have to know understand the scenario that you're running into and see, it's practice. The faster you get at it, it'll be quicker, and the dog will be, or the animal will be more likely to sit still for 5 minutes. Some may not. So I know it's a long-winded answer, but to answer your question, yes, you have to get the vet involved, because when you have an owner that you're working with, they're already bought into the idea of doing a brace. So you want to ask them, who's the veterinarian? Did the veterinarian recommend this? Did the veterinarian agree? Because some vets don't think braces work. They don't think it, don't even bother. But like I said, the younger generation of vets, they're more apt to have more options and be more reasonable. And so definitely, to answer your question, ask the owner who the veterinarian is and see if you can give him a call personally.
Very good.
Okay, we've got several other questions. So how about, let's see, have you been able to follow up or get feedback from the owners as to the reduction of overuse syndrome of the extremities of the animal?
I do follow up with my owners. A lot of them are very happy to share things on social media. And you develop relationships with these owners. And I do, sometimes, like in the human O&P world, if you fit a brace and you don't hear back from them, you think, all right, well, I guess everything is good, which isn't always the right approach to take, right? Even with your prosthetic patients, you want to create follow-up visits. You don't want to just send them off and not come back. But
certainly,
a lot of times I won't hear from owners again, thinking all is well. But I do have a follow-up protocol, which is just a phone call or an email. And I always find that if the owners follow a wearing schedule that you create for them, that they'll be successful. And if they're compliant with it, with the cleaning and the wearing schedule, they're going to be successful.
Good.
All right. So would you ever consider hosting classes for O&P clinicians who are interested in getting into the animal side of O&P?
Absolutely. I think that this is, sharing information is important because, like we know, there's no certification for animal O&P. Should there be? I think as it gets more, I think eventually there should be, because even though we're human O&P professionals, there needs to be an understanding for the anatomy, the gait, the different types of, tolerances that animals have over different biomechanics of devices. So, I think it would be a very important thing to do. And I've actually have a couple presentations that I've made that I've presented to veterinarians at several conferences. So I've already begun that process of creating an education for medical professionals.
Great. All right. So Taylor is saying, this is something that I've been interested in for a long time. However, I don't know where to start. How would you recommend getting started?
Just locally if you're a dog owner, talk to your veterinarian and tell them about him or her about your background. And if, there are any animals that they find has some type of deformity or a knee issue, and do your own research. That's how I did my research. I always say in the human O&P field, I learn about my competitors. I just started researching online about what other people are doing out there and coming up with the designs. So I'd start locally with your vet if you have one. If not, talk to friends and family that have animals and get to know the veterinarians and just put it out there, because it just takes one vet to give you the opportunity, or one owner to give you the opportunity, and just go from there. That's pretty simple. I think that's the way I started.
One of the things, before we go to the next question, one of the things that I have just observed about our O&P profession, this is a profession that really, we have a lot of competitors, yet everyone seems to share so much information between each other. And Pete, what you just said, you're willing to talk to people about this and such. That I see that all the time in this profession. I think that's great.
That's great.
Okay, Megan,
Thank
sorry.
you.
Okay. How about, all right, they're asking, how do you warranty your work with a growing animal? How do you, this is sort of a two-part question. With a growing animal, how do you manage adjustments and growth changes? So I don't know if
It's a
you
very
want
good question. Well, it's not a simple answer. I mean, it's a very good question. Follow-up is important. I go back to basics of treating human patients. How do you treat your pediatric patients? How do you treat your children, pediatric patients you're fitting AFOs and SMOs on? And you set a follow-up schedule and make sure the owners are following a wearing schedule. They're identifying how to identify fit issues. Of course, there's costs involved. So you ask about the warranty in your work. That really is personally your decision, because these are custom devices and they are not, quote unquote, returnable. Have I had an owner that was very upset because she felt that the brace didn't work? Sure. And what did I do? I did the right thing. And whether that means give all the money back, give half the money back, or try to remake it, that's your decision. I've done all of that. You just have to know at the end of the day, you've done the right thing for the owner. And if your approach is doing the right thing, you'll come off, the rewards will be better in the end. So I do warranty the fit in terms of if there are any fitting issues, I will I have a 90-day policy of any fitting issues or adjustments. After that, usually if the owners are compliant in the first 90 days, first 3 months, any fitting issues will be taken care of. And then if you hear from an owner in a year from now and said that this brace never worked, the dog never wore the brace, again, that's a personal decision, and treat it like you would do it in your human O&P field practice.
Okay.
Great. We've got plenty more. Okay. Someone wants to know, do you have any tricks or insights on alignment and height? Anything specific you've learned about that through the years?
Trial and error. I'll put it that way. And it really, trial and error. I do a lot of my work remotely. In other words, sending braces to owners throughout the world. And, you sometimes have to make it adjustable. And what I mean by that is, say, the height of a prosthesis. It's really hard to measure a dog standing on a prosthesis and see if their pelvis is level like you would on with our human patients, of course, because the dog's really not going to stand still. It really comes down to their gait analysis, seeing how the animal's doing with their gait. I do ask for measurements. You're going to ask from a standing, you look at their standing angle, you see how far the residual limb is off the floor. It's difficult. So when I go back to my first answer, trial and error, it really is, because that's where you're going to learn. And there's really, go back to the basics of O&P if you ever have a question of how do I do this, because it really can apply directly to animals. You just have to know that their knees don't extend fully with dogs. Their ankles are at different angles when they stand in humans. So you have to take that into consideration. So you have to learn all about that in studying, studying the animal anatomy.
Mm-hmm. We've got another one. Do you ever request x-rays for prostheses candidates to determine?
Yes, I do. Yeah. I do. Yes, because most, with amputations with animals, it's usually a congenital deformity that they've decided to amputate the whole, all of, or part of the limb. If it's a deformity in an extremity that we need to brace, I want to see the x-ray to see what the anatomy looks like. So very often, and you know what, very often I'll get x-rays before I even ask for them. So yes, to answer your question, I will do often ask for that.
Great. We've got two sort of similar questions, one from Cheyenne and Laura, and they're asking about, are you flying out and casting animals in different parts of the country and world, or are you sending instructions and having the item shipped? How do you approach that?
All the above. I've done all of it. Obviously, it's more, I've been sending my kit, my casting kit out with measurement forms. That's more likely. I do, though, have had several owners and rescues that have flown me throughout the country to go there personally. And obviously, not every owner and rescue has that financial ability, but I have done that. I have actually flown all throughout the country several times to do this.
I think I would go to Australia to brace a pig. I think I would do that. While we're doing this, and I know we have more questions, I will tell you, just going back to the education part, Mark Muller from California State University out of Dominguez Hills says that they're going to have a certificate program in 2022. And there was mention in some of the other comments that some of the veterinary schools are now teaching casting and bracing as well. So that's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is interesting. Wow. That is interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. That's great. I think that's a great thing. Absolutely. I think that's just going to do a great service to our field, because there has to be some guidance too. And some, you never want to say regulations, but there has to be some guidance to help us along the way, because there's a lot of trial and error in what we're doing and what we do.
All right,
Okay,
I got
Megan.
some specific ones here. Let's see. Do you find your CCL canines to be more partial or complete tears?
That's a good question. It's kind of, I don't know if it's one over the other, mostly because there's all different scenarios. It's either it's an older dog that's been through several surgeries that the owners don't want to put the animal through a surgery. It could be one knee was operated on and the other one suffered overuse syndrome, and the knee, the ACL is now lax and they want to protect the knee. There's could be a complete tear that they want to decide on doing a brace first versus surgery. So I can't really answer that what's more than the other. There's just different scenarios that are pretty much all equal, I think, in what scenarios are which when that come across to me here. But it's I think, believe it, an ACL, CCL surgery for an animal, for a dog, can cost $3,000 to $4,000. And, if the owners have a bracing option, that's a fraction of the cost. Some of them are going to be more likely to do that.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, so what is the youngest you would put a prosthesis on a puppy?
4 months old.
I think he's done that. Yes.
Yeah.
Done it.
Done that.
Yeah. I mean, this was a Great Dane puppy, so they're a little bit larger than a pug or a Shih Tzu. But, just again, back to the concepts of pediatric prosthetics. How soon do you put a prosthetic arm on a child when they're born with a congenital deformity? How early do you put a prosthesis on them when they're born with a congenital deformity? So you follow the same concepts, the same ideas, probably old enough to where you can actually put a device on the dog, because Rosie, the first thing the vet was putting on her was a baby sock with a medicine bottle, an empty medicine bottle, empty pill bottle,
Vial.
and wrap it with tape, and then just put a little bit of gauze on the bottom. So, that's,
I'd imagine that, sort of consulting with the vet as well, they will know a little bit too about what's tolerated at certain ages for animals too.
Absolutely. And
Oh.
and it's just, you want to get them into something as soon as possible because they're going to adapt. I think one of the biggest challenges with it, and I had an owner that had a dog that was 12 years old and had her front leg partially amputated, and she rescued her and had no idea how long her leg was amputated for. And that was not a really good, she wasn't a good candidate because she adapted to that for so many years that simply did not know how to put her leg down and use a prosthesis. So that was a little bit maybe too late, but the prosthesis wasn't useful.
Pete, I have a question for you. Someone asked a question regarding suspension. Do you ever use suspension in your devices itself? And if so, where can pressures be taken?
Absolutely. There are two main things. The first two things I think about when I'm deciding if an animal is a prosthetic candidate. One is suspension. Two, how much of the limb is left.
Okay.
We don't have many, if any, liners that'll fit the shape of a small dog. Or you may be able to find a liner that'll fit a horse's leg, but so you don't have the option for using a pin system and the majority of animals you come across. So you're using basics. You're using supracondylar suspension, cuff straps. Back to old school prosthetics. You are using that because you don't have the ability to fit them with a custom. You could make a custom silicone liner, but how much money is an owner really looking to spend on that?
Or a vacuum. Yeah.
Exactly. So
yeah.
I would say the suspensions I'm using is back to basic prosthetics. And I don't like to put harnesses around a dog, around the dog and strap it to the other side, because you're gonna just hinder that animal, make it uncomfortable for them. So I try to keep it as simple as possible. And sometimes they're just not a candidate because the leg just won't stay on.
Very good. Pete, I have one last question here.
Sure.
What type of scanner do you use? That's the question that's been asked. We saw it in the video clip.
Yeah, that was a scanner that a company let me utilize and try because of his love for animals. And I used it for a while, but the problem is with the carvers, the models were too small to carve.
Oh, interesting.
So it was trial and error. I used the scanner in the video, just, it was fancy, of course, added a little flair to the story. And it wasn't, I was using that at the time, right?
Certainly.
But to be honest with you, I don't use the scanner regularly now.
Okay.
I don't, it's hand casting, because it's hard to get a scan of an animal when they're moving and you don't always have them sedated. So.
True. Well, Pete, out of respect for everyone's time, of your time and all the attendees' time, I think that's about all the time we have today for the presentation. I want to thank you, Peter DiPaolo. Thank you so much for taking this time to share your story with us. This was not to promote pet O&P and animal O&P. It was taking your story and sharing with us, and it may get other people excited about doing this type of work. So we want to thank you for giving us the inside look into the world of animal O&P. And Pete, seriously, we just wish you all the best, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jim.
Certainly,
I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Certainly. Now, all of the attendees, be on the lookout for more webinars and our podcast, our Credcast podcast from ABC. And once again, if you have topics that you would like to hear a discussion or presentation on, please let us know. I said before, you're going to be receiving the email from Megan. She's going to send that out to you from ABC with a survey. And also, if you would like to let us know what you'd like to hear about, just say the word. We will research everything just to get it moving right along. We thank you so much for your time, and we just hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much from ABC.